I think your producer mode cut us out, homie.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
You can hear
I
me,
can
right?
hear you. Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Very good.
All right.
All right, cool. No, we're up there. It's
We're all
just
good.
whenever I mute the actual output, um, it's
Okay.
it's doing its little weird thing. So I'm gonna let it go. Uh,
Oh,
yeah. So we can just hang tight. Um, Thank you
Uh,
for forcing me to have to revisit The Look of Love. I want to say that up
oh.
front. 'Cause-
Yes, well, that is that's our version.
right.
yep.
Um, yeah, so yeah, not the well, clearly the ABC song, but our version.
Yeah.
Interesting.
No,
So you've done your research.
I was a DJ for
Of
20
course.
years, and
Oh,
I was
cool.
actually a moderator on a site that's called whosampled.com. And on that, they like put together the little links that tie
Yeah.
original songs, interpolated songs, remakes, all that together. And so when I put the song in, Who Sampled, because it's in my browser history, it came up first. And I was like, that's that song.
Wow.
And then
That's cool.
I heard the ABC version, and
Yeah.
it made me flash right to where my dad, he used to take me to the club that he DJ'd at, and I would be a kid dancing around while he prepped for that night or that weekend. And The Look of Love by ABC it's a good song. It's a good song. It is.
Yeah. It is
It's a good
was
80s
it
cut.
definitely it still is a good song, was a good song. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. So
So
when you said your dad took you to the club where ABC was playing, I'm thinking, how much older than you am I?
you are. I will turn 40 this year, so I'm
Okay.
not far.
Yeah.
80s baby for sure.
No. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I've got that dreaded
Ha-
birthday coming up in April.
are you dreading it?
oh,
Oh,
Very good.
yes.
Very good. That's one thing we'll talk about. Very good. Very good.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
wife is older than me by 3.5 months, so she has already turned 40. So
Yes.
I get to call her my cougar for a couple of months. And
Of course.
but yeah, she had a hard time with, she said she had a harder time with 39 than 40. So
40 was good for me. I was just starting to live again.
that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
good.
and I've done just yeah, that. This next one's just I have a bit of vomit in my mouth when I actually
Oh
say
no.
it,
Well, we'll get into it.
but that's
Hopefully
okay.
we'll keep that
We
all
will.
down. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Cool.
Very good.
mm,
All right.
mm, mm,
T
mm.
minus 8 seconds.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a special time traveling edition of the Sober Swole podcast. My name is Jake Howard.
And I go by Swirl.
Chocolate and vanilla swirl.
Jake.
And oh, that's me. And before we get started on tonight's episode, I'd like to give a shout out to Royalty Nutrition. That's royaltynutrition.com. And to help me out with that, as always, here is Warhorse.
Hey, it's Warhorse. Do you want your workouts to look like this? Or do you want your workouts to slay? When Warhorse picks his pre-workout, he wants it to slay. If you want second place, go with somebody else. If you want to be a champion, go with Royalty Nutrition.
Every time. I love it. Check it out, royaltynutrition.com. They are a veteran-owned and operated supplement company that doesn't automatically use the cheapest ingredients possible while making supplements to help you along your fitness goals. Use the discount code 37HAKE at checkout to save 15% on your entire order. My next shout out of the evening will be Gorilla Gains. That's gorilla-gains with a Z.com. They are a fitness apparel company that you can wear comfortably in and out of the gym. They also make great equipment that helps keep you safe while you train. Check them out and use the discount code Jake15 to save you 15% on your entire order. And to talk about his mighty buy-to-buy empire, here is TJ Swirl.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are shopping in-store or online and you find you don't have the time, towing, or the muscle to move what you just purchased, give us a call. That is buy to buy at BUYTOBYE everywhere you are. online. Yes, we help you from the time you buy until the time we say goodbye. That's with on-demand delivery, moving, staging. We'll mount your TV for you, and we'll put together that IKEA purchase that you're going to regret later. This is the content creation portion of Buy to Buy. This is Buy to Buy Studios. We do remote live streaming, interviews. If you're a musician, if you're a DJ, if you just want to upgrade your current offering, whether that's just an audio podcast or it's just an idea still, let us know. We do creative consulting as well. Always high quality, low stress, remote controlled. Jake, who have we got tonight?
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight on the show, we have Justine Whitchurch. She is not only a mother, author, personal trainer, motivational speaker, she is also a sober warrior. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Wow, what an intro. I forgot I'm half of those things.
we like to bring the heat around here.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, you're obviously more well known in Australia.
Mhm.
So, what would you like to? How would you like to introduce yourself to our audience out here in the good old States?
Well, I guess I'm a 49-year-old mother of two, which you mentioned before, who had a near-death alcohol addiction, and I've been sober 9 years. And the basis of my recovery was fitness and health, and so I guess I made a 360 life change and became a fitness coach. And that's primarily what I do here in Australia. And I've been writing about that and blogging about that for a period of time. And last year released my book, Sobriety, Delivered Everything Alcohol Promised. And that's pretty much what I bang on about. My mission is to help make the journey to sobriety easier for others based on what I've learned and the techniques and tips that I have managed to implement along the way.
Excellent. So, tell us a little bit about Eclipse.
Oh, okay. So we go back there. So, okay. So in my I'm going to call it my youth. I still feel youthful, but when I was in my 20s, my teens through my 20s, I was in the music industry for a very long time as a singer. And in my 20s, I was signed to Sony Records here in Australia, and I was in a band called Eclipse. We had a couple of top 10 singles, and yeah, I did the old 90s pop star thing for a little while.
What led to your career in music? Like, how did all that come about?
You know what? I can't remember a time in my youth where that wasn't actually my main focus. I have always been quite the performer, and I was one of those kids that was up grabbing all the other kids together and putting on a show when I was 4 or 5, and coordinating the whole thing. I loved the entertainment industry. I loved being on stage. I loved being in front of the camera. And I guess, for a really good period of my, especially my younger years, I couldn't see anything past that. That's all I wanted to do. So it, I have suffered from anxiety throughout my life, but interestingly enough, I'd never had social anxiety. So that was a huge part of my adolescence and then my early adulthood. I loved it. I still do love it to an extent. I don't sing anymore, but I still like the camera and all the other things that go with it.
I bombed on stage once. It was my senior year at a talent show, and then I haven't been on stage since. So same.
Yeah.
So,
I think you either love it or you love it or you hate it. But yeah, no, I definitely loved it. So that was pretty much my goal from a very young age until I decided to jump out of it in my mid to late 20s.
I know you've done other interviews about that in your past, but what led to you giving up your career in music?
Anxiety. A lot of bloody anxiety. that was pretty much it. I was at a time in my sort of mid 20s where I was going through at that time I was going through some real heavy relationship stuff. I've always suffered from, general anxiety disorder. I also was only diagnosed formally probably, 5 years or so ago with obsessive compulsive disorder, which I have always had in abundance.
Mhm.
So it just became too much. It was very much the commercial music industry, and I was starting to dabble around with alcohol then. So that was probably its first intervention into making my anxiety worse. And I just felt like I needed to get out. I needed a break. It was just all too much. It was overwhelming. If I could press rewind and do it all over again, it'd be a very different story.
I know the podcast. I think was it the Last Drink podcast you were on recently.
Yeah,
I,
last
I
drinks. Yep.
I listened to that their latest episode. And you mentioned that you used to drink before you went on stage because of your anxiety. Um,
Yeah.
Sobriety is a big part of this show. I never had an issue with alcohol. However, as an entertainer myself, I made it a point to not be the boring sober guy, because when you're in a room full of people who are drinking, especially with the master of ceremonies, like you want to feel the same energy that they do. And so that was my excuse. My excuse was I wanted to feel, and I think that it showed. I never lost a job because I got sloppy. I never had that to where they told me, "Could you slow down?" Like I just had
Yeah.
a higher tolerance, and it kind of added to the performance. But when I made the decision to stop because of the toxicity of the alcohol, like my body couldn't recover like it used to. So I was like, okay, something's got to give, and so alcohol was what gave. So um, I know that
Yeah.
you mentioned that you used a mask as well, and so your anxiety was the big part of that.
Yeah, for sure. So, especially in the latter years, uh, with stage performances and things like that, when my anxiety was overwhelming, I'd be backstage shotting vodka or whatever have you. And, sometimes I pulled it off, depending on how much I had and how quickly it caught up with me. But there were times, and I distinctly remember one performance where I was. It was just a smallish gig I was doing in between other stuff, and I'd I'd done a couple of vodka shots beforehand, and they didn't seem to have enough of an effect quick enough. So I had a couple more, and then I got out there, and sure enough, mid song, I just like completely forgot what I was doing, completely forgot lyrics, and just stuffed the whole thing up. Yeah, so I very much used alcohol to medicate, and that's exactly what I was doing at that point in time, to medicate my way through a very, very uncomfortable feeling of anxiety.
I can relate to that one.
Yeah, yeah,
Lots of
yeah.
sorry, my
No, yeah.
camera's a little wonky. So, so you I just have a bunch of just like spitball questions here up first
Just
before we
go.
really get into
Yep.
things. But so what was it like to tour with Kylie Minogue?
Oh, that was fun, and they were my non-drinking days. So
Yeah.
I was super young then. So like, I wasn't even 17. I was in year 12 at school, which is our final year here in Australia. And
Hmm.
I was touring with my boyfriend at the time, which was, even more exciting. That whole world was just it was fascinating, and we were doing really big, what we call big arenas here in Australia, as her support act, and 10 to 15,000 people when you're standing on stage and you're 16, not even 17 years of age. It was incredible, and I met tons of amazing people, and um, at the time, like people that would just you'd say hi to back. Like she was dating Michael Hutchence at the time, so you guys know In Excess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And it was a little bit surreal. There was a lot of really really cool stuff going on.
That's that's rad. Because
Yeah.
Kylie Minogue could still get it.
Oh yeah.
again,
She's hot to try. She's an incredible woman.
yeah, she made it over here. Like he
Yeah.
was born in Illinois, which I don't know if you know where that is. It's smack dab in the middle of the US. And I'm from Indiana. And so for her music to permeate the Midwest,
Yeah, to get where like corn is grown.
yeah,
Oh,
big deal. So that's
yeah.
really awesome.
Yeah, we know. You know, the US is not necessarily a fan of that style of music, but Kylie did it. We know.
Yeah, she crossed through. So you had three group mates?
So in the band, in Eclipse, yes, there was three others. So another two guys and another girl.
And so did the alcoholism come into play with the dynamic of the group?
I'm not sure that anybody really knew at that point, you know, what I was doing. And in saying that, ironically, the height of my alcohol addiction was not when I was in the music industry. It was all post that. It was post, you know, during a really icky marriage and then divorce, and you know, post that it got worse. They probably didn't know to the extent, definitely, and they didn't know how bad my anxiety was, and they probably really didn't know about a couple of shots here and there to just calm the nerves. But I certainly wasn't doing it in excess at those points in times. It was definitely later, which is interesting because everybody says, "Oh, you're in the music industry, you know, no wonder," kind of thing. It's like, you know what? That was actually probably my most sober time. It was post that. It was life and general shit that basically got me to the point that I was at. It was my inability to cope with everyday life.
Wow. That's wild. Yeah, 15,000 people do personal issues.
I know, go figure, right? So that's, you know, I in my book I talk about the fact that the place that I felt the most safe in, and I guess I felt most alive and comfortable, was things like on stage and in front of a camera, which is unusual because that's most people's most awkward place. For me, that's where I felt and still probably feel the best. But it's the other stuff, you know. I can remember, it's interesting. I can remember walking off stage and then going, "Oh shit, now my boyfriend's just said this. And that would be the time when I'd want to reach for a drink.
Well, I've heard something like that similar in just like other interviews that they talk to other artists that end up, you know, doing it, you know, living the life.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, on stage, that's the environment. That's where you're at. That's where you're comfy. And it's just, you know, dealing with the real world is where it's comes and gets you.
Yep. That's it.
So you stepped away from music and you dealt with your marriage, right?
Yeah, so I stepped away from the music, and I probably I had met who was to be my first husband at the time, and I was definitely had learnt. Look, there was the odd occasion, you know, when I was younger where I'll talk about that later on, but where I first learnt that I could actually medicate with alcohol. But then I had these periods of time in between where I didn't do it. But yeah, I left the music industry. And not too long after that, I did get married, and I basically got into a corporate kind of life. So I was working, you know, a normal job like everybody else, and I got married and then had kids a few years later.
What were you doing? What were you doing in the corporate world? You just bouncing around, or did you have a
No,
set gig?
so for a good period of time, I became what's called a workplace trainer and assessor, and so, you know, work in organisations on, you know, mainly I worked in a lot of call centres actually for a big airline here in Australia, on customer service and sales and general business stuff.
That's pretty cool.
So
I,
That was kind of boring, but
Right.
yeah,
no.
it
Hey,
actually wasn't boring. It wasn't boring at the time. It was necessary. It was called generating an income.
Right. Yeah.
yeah. Well, so I turned 18 and joined the Marine Corps, and then I've been everywhere since. So
Okay.
anything that doesn't sound like something I've done, I'm like, ooh, maybe what
Yeah,
is
right.
that? You
Okay.
know?
Anything anything that doesn't involve a whistle and 20 push-ups.
So so closer to where you are now in terms of
Yeah.
age in your life, you
Mhm.
made the decision to stop. Is AA as prevalent in Australia as it is in the US? Is it even a thing there?
Oh yeah. So it's very prevalent. So I you know what? I made a very unconscious decision to get sober because my hand was very much forced. I was not in control. I was very much being steered, thankfully, by family who put me into a rehab program, so to speak. Um, AA is prevalent, very prevalent, as much as it is everywhere else. It's not necessarily the path that I took. I went to a couple of meetings myself before, well, I think actually probably, I reckon 2 years before I really fell off my perch when I was thinking, am I not? And my dad's actually just gone 35 years sober. And
Nice.
dad, 100%, yeah, he's amazing. He did the whole AA was how he, commenced his recovery journey, and he did it for a long time. And look, he still does go to the odd meeting now. Um, and I think he encouraged me to go to a meeting at one point in time. And look, I don't know whether I was just not ready for it at that time, or it was not right. But it's not the path that I followed, but it is a very it's a great path to follow if that's what works for you.
Oh, exactly. Like we talked about that a lot here on the show and all kinds of past episodes. Like AA wasn't for me either, but if it's something that
Mm.
works for you, it works.
There's so
For
many
me,
ways to skin a cat. I've talked about this before as well. And you
mhm.
know what? Your journey and your relationship with alcohol is not the same as anybody else's. So why wouldn't that mean that there's more than one way to recover if the reason we drink is different?
Well, so I straight traded addictions. I got sober and I got into bodybuilding,
Yeah.
and then um, I did I did that until I got comfortable with being a little fluffy, and now I
Yeah.
just exercise for health. But
Yeah. Well, I call the gym my church. So it
yeah,
is my AA. Exercise for me is my AA. And
mhm.
I take it everywhere with me.
Yeah. I said for years bodybuilding saved my life. I mean,
Yeah. And I'm sure it did.
I wasn't a big geared up juice head by any means, but I mean, I just living that life, getting in that regimen of your food, getting in that regimen of you get your water in. You need this. You need to train this today. You need to eat this. You need to do that. You need to do this much cardio. You need to get this much sleep. You need to be up at this
Hmm.
time. Pop, 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 pop.
Yeah.
And that was great. It got to the point where I got a side gig working in a bar, and that was okay.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and then until my in-person training stuff picked up. There was like I can do this. Now I just see
Yeah.
drunk me's. Here's what I used to look like, this idiot over here, and out the door you go. And
Yeah. I know. It's an eye opener, isn't it?
oh yeah, like I've said before too. Working at this dance hall, it was probably one of the better choices I made. Actually, that really helped solidify my sobriety because I still probably just had 2 years, just about 2 years sober too, and then so I went and got this gig because I needed it, and it was like this is 100% why I'm done, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. I know. I think it's that is, and I've been talking to a couple of people recently who are like very newly sober, only a couple of months in, and they've recently been to a couple of functions over Christmas, and they're like, "Oh my God, like I can't believe that I was ever like that, seeing it from an outside perspective. It's so different, and I think you're right. I actually think it's really good early on to see that, because it gives you, we all need in those early days incentive to stay sober, because
Hmm.
it's not easy, right? And that's definitely, adds to the bucket of those.
Did you make the mistake of getting into a relationship right away after you got out of rehab? That seems to be a trend. A
I
lot of
was
people.
married.
Okay. Yeah.
I didn't kind of have a choice. Yeah.
No, no, I just went home.
Yeah, exactly. Things were not great at that time anyway. But yeah, no, I was well and truly remarried. Like, me really falling off my perch was interesting, because I had, from a surface level, I guess I had all the things back together that most people, you know, would want, but that wasn't it. I was miserable. I was, I had a lot of PTSD from my previous marriage, and then I had learned no other way to cope other than through the bottle.
Yeah.
And as you know, once it's a physical dependency, not just a psychological one. That cycle is so hard to break unless something breaks, right?
Right.
So yeah, no, I was already in it. So I was fortunate when I went to rehab. I begged everybody not to put me in as an inpatient, because my kids were only small then. Um, I very long story short, I moved back up to a different state here in Australia, up to Queensland, where my family were. They kind of scooped me up. And my kids were 5. Oh, hang on, how old were they? They were, sorry, 10 and 7. I think, yes, that's 7.5. And I very much needed to hand over care of them without formally handing over care, if you know what I mean, because I was
Yeah.
not capable of looking after them at the time. But they were the only reason I was alive, because I didn't give a crap about anybody else except for them. So my parents, when I had all my physicians and everything had suggested that, you need to go into a program, I begged them not to put me in as an inpatient, because I thought, if you take me away from my kids, I've got nothing else left, right? Because
Sure.
Hmm.
that was all I had. And so I went as a day patient. So I was driven down 3 days a week from 9 till whatever it was in the afternoon, picked up, so that I was ensured that I went, because if I was to get there on my own, by my own devices, I probably wouldn't have attended. I would have steered past somewhere and, gone off for the day. So I actually did 2 lots of 8-week blocks in there, 3 days a week. And,
Okay.
I did actually get asked, do you think you should have gone in as an inpatient? Would that have made any difference, and so forth? I actually think it would have tipped me over the other way. If you'd put
Wow.
me in there away from my family, and, away from the only thing that was really keeping me earthside, I think I would have just completely lost it.
Well, it's so much of sobriety is, no matter the external forces pushing you, a lot of it has to be your idea. If not all of it
Mm,
has to be your idea on some level. So, because you were kind of given the ultimatum of this or that, did
mm.
rehab work, or did you?
Um, Yeah, it did, and I still am yet to, and I probably won't ever know whether it was a combination of the way that it worked, how it was delivered, or whether it was just the right time or right environment. I think it was a combination of all of that. So for me, going in as a day patient, I attended the program, so it was very much. The focus here in Australia with these programs is a lot of mindfulness, being present, looking at the basis of why you medicate. Like, it was so many things, but it was group therapy, which is something I had never done. I'd always had one-on-one, counseling sessions or psychology sessions and so forth. I'm a real people person, and I'm an empath. I do. My heart is, not just on the edge of my sleeve; it's falling off my sleeve. And I think being in a group environment, in fact, I know being in a group environment and sharing was on the money for me. It was really on the money. I needed to be amongst other people who were feeling the same thing, going through the same thing. But then I also needed to learn the nuts and bolts of what it was that happens in my head while all this is going on, so that I
Okay.
could look at that. And yeah, it was a combination of so many things. It totally was. I had the right support at home. It was just it worked. In saying that, when I came out of rehab, I did not abstain altogether. I thought
Okay.
that first year that I could be a social drinker.
Mm.
Who
Go on.
wants to give up alcohol altogether, right? That's what, whoever. I mean, I don't know that many people that at least the first time of trying to, with that kind of level of addiction that I had,
Well, so
or physical dependence. You go and you go, okay, it kind of says, yeah, I'm going to do this. But then you think, if I just get it under control, I can be a normal drinker like everybody else.
I think in both of our countries there is a significant amount of culture that has been molded around social drinking.
Mm, mm.
And I mean, I've never been to Gold Coast or anywhere in
Hmm.
Australia, but just from stories and random crappy beer commercials, Crocodile
Yeah.
Dundee.
We're a very large alcohol consuming country. In fact,
Mhm.
per capita, I think we're almost the highest in the world.
Wow.
See,
It's
old,
ingrained in our culture. Ingrained.
old young Marine me would be like, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you'd be booking a flight. Absolutely.
Mm.
Challenge
Yeah.
accepted.
Mm.
Well, because
Yeah.
I don't. Did you ever see? Did the movie Beer Fest ever make it over there?
Oh, look, it may have. It's not one that I
Well,
saw.
it was made by they're a group of American comedy writers called Broken Lizard,
Okay.
and they made a movie called Beer Fest, and it was everywhere around the world they gather together to have who's the best beer drinkers around the world competition
Right.
kind of thing. So when I was
So real intellectual stuff.
yeah, real highbrow comedy, good
Yeah.
for you. But when I was 18, all so we weren't legally allowed to drink, but we knew a guy that was
No.
able to go out and purchase. But we started our own drinking team.
Jeez.
Okay.
So I mean, I'm saying my heyday,
Underage.
Yeah.
underage.
But
Well,
okay, because
Drinking team.
it's 21 in the US, isn't it?
yep,
Yes.
Yeah, it's 18 here.
yeah, I could have just rolled into town, and been like, all right.
Exactly. Exactly.
Hey, Matt's here. Hey, buddy.
So we're
So,
live streaming right now. So we've got a couple of people. We don't have a big following. We have a dedicated following, and
yep.
this is
Oh,
Flex Chef.
cool.
So
I love that movie. So more than one person saw it.
there you go.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Well, so he Flex Chef, he's a Navy veteran.
Oh, okay.
He's also now a Soba warrior.
Yeah, cool.
He's a good man.
So how did the process of you putting your book together? What was the catalyst for that, and who helped you put it together?
So when I got sober, and then for me, exactly the same as you're talking about. So my AA was my fitness, and when I started training, um, as it's interesting. Exercise came by the way from as a comment from my psychologist when I was going through rehab. He said, you should start training, and I didn't realize that was going to be probably one of the most pertinent parts of my recovery altogether. But I started. I went and studied personal training and became a fitness trainer, and I started blogging on social media about initially about fitness because I wasn't brave enough to talk about anything else. But then I started talking about my fitness and how it had been become the foundation of my wellness and a really crucial part of my initial recovery and then my ongoing, maintenance of my sobriety. And when I started talking, I realized that I had a bit of an audience and people were messaging me saying, hey, that's me, or that was me, or that's, I feel like I am you. There was this overriding theme though from all of those private messages that they didn't quite know how to get out. And so I had made a pact with the big man upstairs.
Mm.
um, I had one very close call. I actually probably had more than one close call, but I had a really close call where I was non-responsive at home and taken by ambulance to our emergency department here in Australia. I think I blew 0.38. I always have to go back and remember. It was pretty bad. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. I was not conscious, so I know when I came to and I was lying on a hospital bed, I made a pact, or I prayed and I said, please, whatever I have to do, if you get me out of this state, if you get me out of this position, I will do whatever it takes to, whatever you want me to do. And I had no idea what that was going to be. But the more, once I recovered and I realized how much fitness had become such a crucial and integral and helpful tool in my recovery in terms of, as you said, self-discipline, structure, nutrition, all of the things that it did, I realized it just kept coming to me, whether you believe in God, the universe, or whatever have you. I kept getting messages going, this is it, this is what it is, and then there's people messaging me through my writing saying, that's me, how do I get out? I'm like, I need to keep writing. This is therapy for me. This is helping other people. And then people were saying, well, how can I read about your story? Have you got a book? No, I don't. And so the process of that, I actually wrote it completely by myself. I
Love
had
that.
no help.
Awesome.
I did it. I had people help me with editing and that sort of thing to begin with. And, then when I self-published, got a little bit of help there. But I have actually just been signed by another publishing company in the UK. So they're taking over all of that soon. So I hope that had a much bigger reach and will be, taken to places that I can't necessarily get it. But it was a very interesting process, and it was a quite difficult process, especially early on. I had started writing it in 2019, and on a personal level, I had a lot of really challenging things happen in my life and our life as a family. And I didn't pick up a drink, but I was my mental health was extremely poor. I was back into regular weekly sessions with a psychologist, and I was unpacking a lot of trauma that I hadn't unpacked, which I previously thought I had, but I hadn't.
Right.
And I actually hadn't really writing the book and being. I'd always said I need to be as authentic as possible. I need to tell my entire truth, because if I fluff around the outside, how's anyone ever going to relate to this, right? How am I going to help them if I'm not telling them my raw truth? But writing that and saying it out loud, I hadn't forgiven myself. I thought I had, but I hadn't forgiven myself whatsoever. And based on everything else that was going on in my life, my psychologist said, put it down. I don't want you to write this. This needs a break right now. So I think I had a period of maybe 6 months during that year where I had to leave it alone. And then when I got well enough, I picked it back up, and it sounds quite airy-fairy, but I remember in some of the chapters where it was, especially in the early days of getting through rehab or talking about what I'd done, I used to just put like this ring of protection around me. I'm like, okay, everybody who's out there looking after me, help me. I've just got to get this down on paper. And I would do it. It was almost like I was, catatonic. It would just come out. And then when it was done, I was like, that pit's gone.
Yeah.
I can put it to bed.
Well, that's amazing. I think it takes a lot of courage to make yourself that vulnerable, and then you put it on paper and be like, here you go, read it. You know,
Yeah,
there's it's
let strangers judge it. Yeah, that's crazy. That's that. I think listening to you say that, that audience sounds like your group therapy,
Roro.
and I think we just lost her. Right as I say that,
Hey,
her signal
hey,
drops. So,
hey, but that's okay. So far, this is going great. Hopefully, she'll dial back in here
no,
soon.
yeah. Hopefully, she comes right back onto the thing. It'll pop right back up if she clicks on the link. Um, but yeah, the idea that there it is.
There
Hello.
she is.
We went somewhere. We're
Yeah,
back though.
we lost you for a moment.
Oh, it's all right. We were talking just a bunch of shit, just a whole
You
bunch.
No, what I started
makes
saying.
it more interesting, doesn't it? Technical
Yeah.
difficulties.
What I was starting to say was, it sounds like them hearing you was how you reacted to group therapy, like it was something that they hadn't come across, and you just, like you said, you being vulnerable and putting it out there allowed them the opportunity to heal, to see it
Yeah,
without, it's like a, the voyeurism that happens with a car crash. Like, you'll slow down and you'll stare at it, and it's a big deal for that moment in time, and then you just go about your day. Like, but it's the biggest
yeah,
deal in the world while you're right there. So yeah, just
yeah.
hearing you say that, that's incredible.
And I think one of the things that I've always um, part of my intention is to show show hope. I use that word a lot because when you're in the depths of addiction, or are struggling with alcohol abuse of any kind, or just life in general, if you can tangibly see how somebody has moved out the other side, that's a real thing. It's not just a talked about module or something you're doing. It's okay, she's done it, so I'm going to listen to her. So, I feel a sense of responsibility there to pass on what I've learned and how I did it, because that's what I should be doing. I really feel obligated to do that.
You show her Flex Chef's last comment about pulling into port.
No. Oh,
Fun fact: they specifically told us before we pulled into port in Australia not to try and outdrink the women there.
yeah. Yes,
That's
that would
awesome.
be correct. Like, we have, so in Australia we have, and I write about this. My audience started with women predominantly, and we have, I know it's talked about in the US as well, this mummy wine culture.
Yes.
Yeah,
Ugh.
but then we have the bonding with, the beers with the boys and the bonding and all that kind of thing, right? So there is quite a distinct difference between, how women and men tend to use alcohol, albeit there's clearly a lot of crossovers as well. But women in Australia are pushing it at epidemic levels. Absolutely. Um, you know, I always say I refer to all of this, and particularly mummy wine culture, the epidemic that'll outlive any pandemic, because it's something that's become very normalized, and that's the danger. When it becomes normalized and it becomes an expectation, not just something that's accepted. So alcohol is not just accepted as a tool to cope with life or to socialize or whatever have you. It's expected, and that's really dangerous, because then anybody that wants to go outside that norm, which is not really a norm, right? It's been created as a norm. Is like, how on earth do I integrate into society at any level unless that's what I do?
Right. So I don't. Is it the same? Is it the same there? Like dad comes home from work and he has his 6 pack of beer, or has a beer or two right after work, sitting in his easy chair. Is it kind of like the same thing there?
Yeah, but the women are throwing their bags at the door as they walk in and grabbing the bottle of wine out of the fridge just as quickly.
Dang.
It's not. It's totally. The women are definitely here in Australia, are pushing it absolutely, because they will 100%, you know, put that down to coping with children and work and life. And, you know, I will say that, you know, the pandemic probably just exacerbated that as well. But there's a million and one reasons that they are justifying their medicating.
Yep. Well, it's my favorite Australian of all time.
And they'll egg each other. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I'm jumping on you. This dang delay.
No. I was just gonna say they egg. No. The thing is, they egg each other on too. It's like, you know, that having a bad day. I'll go and get the bottle of wine out of the fridge. Or come over. We'll have a couple of drinks while the kids play. So, you know, it's quite dangerous.
Well, I was just going to bring up, so because bodybuilding was and really is such a big part of my life, Lee Priest is probably my favorite Australian of all time.
Mm-hmm.
But he's married a quite a younger woman than he is now this time around, and he always talks about her and her tequila. He has to be careful when he comes home.
Yeah.
Like
I can imagine. It's just such a normalized part of supposedly what we do as a society now. It's quite scary.
How are things over there in terms of cannabis?
You know what? I'm really crappy with stats and stuff like that. I wouldn't imagine it's probably much different to anywhere else. Me personally, I don't know that many people that, like, it's not something that, you know, a lot of my friends, I think maybe it's still quite, I don't know, generational, maybe certain people do it. I don't know. It was never the drug that was the most predominant when I was growing up, or definitely now with my circle of friends. It might be with the real younger crowd, you know, maybe not. I'm not sure.
It's just always
It's there.
Yeah, it's just interesting in the US because over the last 10 years or so, it's been socially accepted in a similar fashion. And so I
Mm,
personally got my medical marijuana card for depression, anxiety. I have TMJ in my jaw, all this other stuff.
mhm.
So for all these ailments, and it has brought balance to my day to day.
Okay.
And so I know that that's not something you can do with alcohol at all.
Yeah.
Yet
No.
I grew up with, especially in the Midwest, with one hell of a stigma. So I remember making a conscious effort to avoid it, outside of it
Mm,
smelling, outside of all the negatives. But I talk about it so fondly now because of the way I've been able to implement it into my life, and the way that it doesn't have the hangover, it doesn't have the calories, it doesn't have all these other things that the things that that dilly a night full of that will ruin a week of positive eating and working out. And so
mm,
like that doesn't happen. I might eat more than I should, but
mm,
like I never try and make it the most fun night ever. It's just like I do it before I do the dishes or before I go clean the pool. Like it makes the mundane things
more
less
tolerable, I
tedious.
guess.
Yeah, so I don't use it as like a party drug. So like my
mm,
wife and I will take edibles before we go see a movie or go to dinner or something like that. So it allows us to enjoy the each other's company and the mood, but there's never pressure. It's never I don't smoke until I can't like function. Like none of that is fun to me at all. So
mm,
all of the things, the reasons why the reaction that you might have, or it being a generational thing, is because it's more of a party element. I implement it in the exact opposite way. So um
mm,
but I know it took a long time for it to get even where it is. But the recreational aspect of it, capitalism is taking hold. So you're going
mm,
to be able to get it in like Circle K's in Florida for no reason. But
mhm. Yeah, right.
they're treating
Yeah,
it the
look,
same way.
I don't know enough about, I mean, I don't know enough about, you know, it for medical. I don't know how much of the drug is in it for medical purposes, you
Yeah.
know. I don't know. I know I had very close family members who were very much addicted to marijuana, um, in Australia. and have suffered psychosis from it. So it's not, for me, it's not something that
It's
I would
distraction, for sure.
encourage anybody that in my immediate family to use, especially with genetically being predisposed to addiction and mental health. And so I've seen it used in different ways and it not be a positive thing. So,
Absolutely.
but it's the same as people that can pick up a drink. There are people that can pick up a drink and put one down and have one. They're few and far between.
Not me.
Yeah, not me either. So you're rare. You're rare.
Oh.
So yeah, cannabis is kind of a big deal here, obviously.
Yeah.
But so what about
You have teenagers, correct?
Yeah, I have, my daughter's almost 21 and my son's 18. So we have had many of the conversations around this kind of stuff, albeit they were really young when I went into, when I was at that level of addiction. And I thankfully had a very supporting family who were able to somewhat disguise, just how bad things were. So they just thought mum was sick a lot. But as they grew and as I became more vocal about my own issues, I most certainly spoke to them very openly about what it means for them, and what it did for me. So we have very big communication in our house around mental health and peer pressure and things like that. I have two very, very, very intelligent kids who understand the genetic predisposition they have, because it's addiction that runs all through my family as well. And they also very much understand the distinct difference between medicating their mental health with alcohol and just drinking alcohol socially. So it's interesting. I know my daughter once had said to me, I think it was about a year ago, had said she was going out, and I said, "Oh, so are you drinking tonight?" And she said, "No, I'm feeling anxious, so I'm not going to drink." I went, "Hey, someone's been listening," because she said she knows, because being anxious, it's the worst time to drink, because not only is it going to make it worse, you are then beginning to medicate.
Well, it's my
So, but in saying that, I have an 18-year-old that's just finished year 12, and here in Australia we have something called Schoolies Week, which is end of year, go hard, and he's no different to any other kid, but at least they're all very aware of when it's when they're drinking maybe for the wrong reasons, and also knowing that that there are people that understand, and someone like me that, hey, I'm not coping, I need help.
My grandpa told me a very interesting story, and I should have listened to him. This is my mother's father. So his biological father was an abusive alcoholic. And so he abstained most of his life. But when he had just married my grandma, he went to go help her dad put a roof on their garage. So after I got done with that, my great grandpa said to my grandpa, "Do you want a beer?" And he said, "Sure." And he said, "I need you to understand that I'm an alcoholic, because I had one beer and I liked it so much I knew I should never have another one. You have to be really careful with this." And this, it was something he told me later in life too, after I'd gotten sober, and I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
You,
And it's and look, even if it's whether you like it, but if you ask people the question, do you drink because you like the taste of alcohol, or do you drink because you like the feeling alcohol gives you? If people are honest, I would hate to think what that percentage looks like, because I don't know that, if you ask me what do I miss about alcohol, it was, well, I don't miss it now at all, but, it was always the feeling.
Mm.
I've only ever said, there's a couple of times where I've said, I actually loved a cold beer on a hot day. Like that would be the one alcoholic drink that I actually liked. I think I liked the taste of, and it wasn't so much about the effect. But most people are drinking because they want that feeling.
My thing is, I really like a good scotch.
Okay.
Now, I would love to sit on my back porch with just a scotch.
Yeah.
But I know that scotch would turn into that bottle of scotch and then my
Of
divorce.
course. Yeah, I know. It's one's not enough. One's too many. 1,000's not enough.
Right.
So Justine, would you ever buy a non-alcoholic cold beer on a hot day?
Do you know what? That's a really good question. And in Australia, we have a lot of, I don't know about the US, but we have this huge influx of non-alcoholic beverages at the moment that are very much, similar taste to those that are clearly or as close as to real alcohol. I was told when I was in rehab at my level of addiction that I shouldn't do that because it would be a trigger for me. I did try it like that first year, and like I said, I never drank for the taste. I drank for the bloody feeling, and it's like this is nice. It tastes like wine, but it's not doing anything for me. So now it's a trigger. I think I might have had a sip of somebody's non-alcoholic beer a little while ago, and I was like, wow, that's really good. But my brain just went, it tastes like beer. You just got to stop. So for me, it just doesn't work. I'll go out and have non-alcoholic cocktails, but that's like having a big old fruit juice, right? That's pretty much it. You don't taste alcohol in a cocktail anyway. You're just tasting everything else that's with it. Look, I think there's a real place for them though, because there's a lot of people who are in the middle there that still really want to go out and enjoy the taste of alcohol and want to socialize. That these sort of products definitely serve us well.
So
I've tried.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I tried it was a whiskey substitute. Boy, was that a mistake. So
okay.
Not only did it taste nothing like whiskey, but to simulate the alcohol burn, they just put a shitload of pepper in it.
Yeah, right.
So I was like,
yeah. So not ideal, but it didn't.
It made me more mad.
It was okay. Okay, all right.
It made me more. I was just angry. Like, why did I buy this?
Yeah. And look, it depends on everybody's, where you got, what stage you're at. I was, my addiction, I was drinking mouthwash in the end, so where I could. So it just has no place in my life, even simulated, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So as I stated earlier, you were on the Last Drink podcast, and you mentioned doing a retreat, a non-alcoholic retreat.
Yeah.
So would that include non-alcoholic beverages on purpose?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, if people want that, I still think it's a really good option. I don't discredit those companies whatsoever. For me, it just isn't, and with the level of addiction that I had, there's a lot of people, and you will have heard about it in the States. We're talking about this gray area drinking, and I think that's that a lot of people in that kind of space tend to benefit quite well from that as well. It would definitely be on the table. I don't care how people stay sober. Like it's it's your choice how you get sober. Each to their own. I know it works for me. It doesn't mean that's necessarily going to work for you.
Well said.
Yeah. So yes, sober retreat will be great. I'm in the midst. I should have that finalized by the end of next week. I'm just capping that off at the moment, and I'm so excited about that.
Where are you Where's the retreat taking place?
It looks like at this stage it's going to be Bali.
Dope.
Mm, yeah.
Well, that's a good start. That's a good starting point.
I know. Not a bad first sober retreat location, right?
Absolutely, that's very cool. Well,
Can
be sure to share that information with us, so we can pass that
Yeah.
in the future as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
Um,
sure.
Can I come? I'm sure we can find a babysitter.
Oh yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's massively it's fitness based too. So that's going to be a huge part of it.
Very nice.
Sweet. I'm looking to shed about 30 pounds.
If you can do that in 6 days, then I'd say that could be a little bit dangerous.
Yeah, a tad. Something you must have cut something off, or
Yeah,
an organ failed
exactly.
somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, and you don't want to do that in Bali because it could be sold somewhere.
Well, am I getting a cut or?
Yeah, no. Who knows? I think we've digressed.
Now I'm just thinking about cutting a deal with a back alley surgeon.
Oh yeah, no, but no.
Right.
I just told you about
Not
my 4
recommended.
kids. Hey.
Yeah. You've got some bills to pay, right?
Well, Jake, we are closing in on it. We just surpassed an hour, so
Oh
we didn't
wow.
take too much of anyone's time. Is there anything else that you would like to ask our guest today?
No, I really think that our conversation went really smoothly. You've been nothing but a delight. Thank you for
Oh, thank
being
you.
our
You guys have been great.
first Australian guest, whole other side of the world.
Yes.
Yeah, of
That's
course.
terrific.
Well, I plan to get over there at some point in time. I think, I actually do have a little bit of a US audience. It seems to be, in terms of overseas at the moment, it's coming a lot from the UK. Another lot of big drinkers.
Yeah.
Hey, that's where Australians originate from, right? So
That's right.
That makes sense.
That's also where my white ass originates from too. So
Yeah.
we got.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, where is most of your audience here in the U.S.? I'm sorry, that's is it?
I actually don't. It's all over. And if I look at even like my Amazon book sales, there's still a bit coming from the US as well. It's interesting. I think I find the way, if you've had a look at the way that I write, I'm quite I would say brutal. I'm very honest, and I don't hold back much, and I'm quite conversation like. And it depends on where people are from as to how I may be a little bit too confrontational.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and at the moment, I think that the UK maybe there's some similarities there. US is a little bit different. In some ways, they're a lot more conservative.
Yeah.
In other ways, they're the opposite. It just changes.
There's definitely some parts in people in the U.S. that love being straight talked, and then there's seemingly a quite a large group of folks that need it. They need to be coddled, and that's not exactly
sugar-coated. I don't sugarcoat anything.
That's not my style either.
No,
I don't have time to baby you because I have actual babies. I got.
Yeah. So yeah, it is interesting.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Please go and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you for spending a little bit more of an hour with us.
No, it's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you for having me and being your first international or Australian guest anyway. It's been very, very cool.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to the Sober Swole podcast. For our guest, Justine, I'm Jake Howard.
I go by DJ Swirl. Warhorse, sign us off.
Hey, it's Warhorse. Do you want your workouts to look like this? Or do you want your workouts to slay? When Warhorse picks his pre-workout, he wants it to slay. If you want second place, go with somebody else. If you want to be a champion, go with Royalty Nutrition.